Hi everyone, welcome to class 4. But before telling you what we are going to discuss in today's class, I really hope that you have done each and everything that we have talked about in the previous classes. And coming to today's class, this class is a very important class because if you remember, I told you SAT is gonna, make you learn, or SAT is gonna ask you on 3 basic equations. One is linear equation, one is quadratic equation, one is exponential equation. We have done linear, we have done exponential. Now we are going to talk about quadratic. So this class is mainly focused on the quadratic equation. Now, looking on the board, the objective of today's class is quadratic equation, solving quadratic equation by factoring, quadratic formula, classic quadratic, quadratic word problems, standard and vertex form of quadratic. So each and everything is we are going to cover up about the quadratic in today's class. As I said, it's a very important class. So you have to keep on making the notes when I'm going to explain it. Okay. So coming to this, when we talk about a quadratic can be represented in 3 forms, right? I'm going to write down all the 3 forms. You also need to write it down in your notebook. The 3 forms of a quadratic are, one is the standard form. The second is the factored form. And the third is the vertex form. Okay. See, you remember now when we were talking about the linear equations, I told you that for a linear equation, you have to remember only one form, which is y equal to mx plus b, right? But when it comes to a quadratic, in quadratic, you have to remember 3 forms. You know, unlike in linear, where there was only one form, which will help you solve each and every question. But in quadratic, there are 3 forms that you need to know to be able to solve every question. Standard form, factored form, vertex form. So all the 3 forms is very important. Now coming to a standard form. So what is a standard form? A standard form looks like y equal to ax square plus bx plus c. This is the standard form of a quadratic, right? Now, what is a factored form? Factored form looks like y equal to a times x minus x1 and x minus x2. I will tell you what is the meaning of these things, x minus x1 and x minus x2. As of now, you can write it down. And the vertex form is y equal to a times x minus h whole square plus k. This is the vertex form, right? Now, coming to the standard form, we are going to talk about each and every form one by one. Coming to the standard form is y equal to ax square plus bx plus c. This is a standard form of a quadratic. Now, what kind of curve a quadratic equation gives us? Unlike a linear equation gives us a straight line, right? A linear equation gives us a straight line. A quadratic gives us a U-shaped curve called parabola. So as you can see on the board is a parabola. Now this parabola can be an upward parabola or it can be a downward parabola like this. This is a downward parabola. Okay. Now the one thing that you have to write, which is very important, is how to identify whether it's an upward parabola or a downward parabola. So if it's an upward parabola, then the coefficient of x square, which is a, if you can look at the coefficient of x square, which is a, if a is positive, then it's a upward parabola. Upward parabola means the parabola that opens upward like this. Okay. But if a is negative, then it's a downward parabola. Downward parabola, which opens downward. Okay, so you have to remember that for an upward parabola, the coefficient of x square should be positive, and for a downward parabola, the coefficient of x square is negative, right? Now, looking at the graph, if you see over here, the point where the graph or the point where the parabola is intersecting the x-axis, they are called x1 and x2. And we have already learned in the previous classes that the point where a graph or where the parabola or where the line intersects the x-axis, that is called the x-intercept of the function. So x1 and x2 are also known as the x-intercept, and they are also known as, so one thing I'm writing on the board, they are known as x-intercept, and they are also known as the roots and the zeros and also solutions. So remember, the point where the parabola is intersecting the x-axis, that is called x-intercept. That is called roots, that is called solutions, and that is called zeros of the function, right? So when we were talking about the factored form, the factored form was y equal to a times x minus x1 and x minus x2, right? This was the factored form. Now let me write it down here. The factored form was y equals to a times x minus x1 and x minus x2, right? In this form, x1 and x2 basically represent the roots of the function, right? Which ultimately means it represents the x-intercepts of the function, which, or you can say it represents the zeros of the function or the solution of the function, right? So in the factored form, x1 and x2 stands for the x-intercepts of parabola. Remember, in the factored form, x1 and x2 stands for the x-intercepts of parabola, right? Now, coming to the vertex form. What is the vertex form? Y equal to a times x minus h whole square plus k. In this form, h and k are called your vertex. What they are called? Vertex. Now, if you look at the figure over here, you can see a parabola, the right figure, this one, you can see a parabola, right? It's an upward parabola. And the point where the parabola takes a turn, the point where the parabola takes a turn is called the vertex of the parabola. And the coordinates of this vertex is represented by h comma k. So in this vertex form, which is y equal to a times x minus h whole square plus k, h and k represent the x and y coordinate of the vertex of parabola. Remember this thing, right? H and k is the coordinate of the vertex. What is vertex? The point where the parabola takes a turn, right? The point where the parabola is intersecting the y-axis, that is called the y-intercept. The point where the parabola is intersecting the x-axis, that is called the x-intercept, which each and everything is on the book. Okay. Please make the complete note of this theoretical part because this is very important. Once you learn this, solving questions will be just like a piece of cake work. I'm telling you. Okay. Now, coming to solving quadratic equation by factoring. Now, when we have to solve the quadratic equation or when we have to find the solution of it, there are two ways. One is by factoring and the other is by using the quadratic formula. Okay. The first way is by factoring. Now, if you have to factor the quadratic, then there are few things that you have to remember. So factoring the quadratic is also known by the name of splitting the middle term. So what is the middle term? B. B is the middle term. What is B? B is the coefficient of x. So in the quadratic equation, b is the coefficient of x, which is the middle term, and you have to split the middle term into two terms. Let's say you have to split the middle terms into two terms, alpha and beta. You have to split it into two terms, alpha and beta, such that the product of alpha and beta should be equal to a into c, and the summation of alpha and beta should be equal to middle term itself, that's b. Okay, again, I'm repeating, you have to split the middle term, which is b, into two terms, alpha and beta, such that the product of alpha and beta is equal to a into c, and the summation of alpha and beta is equal to b itself. Okay, that's the condition for splitting it. Now, for example, this question on the board, this question says that if m and n represent the solution of the equation above, where m is greater than n, what is the value of m minus n, right? So, looking at the equation, what kind of equation it is? It's a quadratic equation, right? It's a quadratic equation. Now, what is m and n? M and n represent the solution of the quadratic. Okay. So first of all, we have to bring it into the standard form, and the standard form is y equal to ax square plus bx plus c. Okay. So if we are going to expand it, so we'll get 2x square equal to 3x plus 3 into 9. Taking all x terms one side, so 2x square minus 3x, taking the constant on also on this side, and this whole thing will be equal to 0, which means if you compare with y equal to ax square plus bx plus c, what is y here? No, if you're just going to compare this with y equal to ax square plus bx plus c, like y equal to this, then what is y? Y is 0. Right? Y is 0, which means in this equation, y is 0. So you have to solve the value of x where y is 0. Now the value of x where y is 0 is known as what? Think about it. The value of x where y is 0, that is known as the x-intercept of the function. You know, what kind of function we have? We have a quadratic function, right? A quadratic function gives us a parabola. Okay. Now the y component of this function is 0, which means which part we are talking about? What value of x we are talking about? We are talking about these value of x. Okay. We are talking about these value of x where the y value is 0, which means we are talking about the x-intercept of the function. Always remember, whenever the y is 0, we talk about the x-intercept. Whenever the x is 0, we talk about the y-intercept, right? Okay, so which means one thing is for sure, that we have to find the x-intercept. Now, one way is that you can factor it out by splitting the middle term. How do you split the middle term? Let me just show it to you. For example, this is 2x square minus 3x minus 27 equal to 0. And if you want to factor it out, so you split the middle term. What is the middle term? That's -3. You have to split this middle term into two numbers such that the product of the number, you have to split it into two numbers, let's say alpha and beta, such that the product of the number is equal to a. What is a? If you compare with ax square plus bx plus c, so what is a? A is 2 and c is -27. So you have to split it into two numbers such that the product of alpha and beta should be equal to a into c, right? Which is -54, and the summation of alpha and beta should be equal to b itself, and the summation of alpha and beta should be equal to b itself. What was b? B is -3. Now think about two numbers which when multiplied gives you -454, but which when added gives you -3. So two numbers which when multiplied gives you -54, but which when added gives you -3 is 9 and 6, which means -9 and +6. So you can split the middle term like 2x square plus 6x minus 9x minus 27 equal to 0. Then you can try to factor it out. 2x, if you take common, x plus 3 over here, minus 9 if you take common, x plus 3 over here. Now it's gonna be x plus 3 if you take common out of whole thing, it will be x plus 3 and 2x minus 9 equal to 0. So one time x plus 3 can be equal to 0, means x equal to -3, right? And one time x 2x minus 9 can be equal to 0, means x equal to 9 by 2, which is 4.5. So there are two values of x. One is -3 and one is, so x, we have got two values of x, -3 and 4.5. This is nothing but your solution. Or because the y value at this value of x is 0, so they are also known as solution or x-intercept. Okay, so this is your x-intercept, right? Now, m is greater than n, which means m is going to be 4.5 and n is going to be -3. Now you have to find m minus n, which is 4.5 minus of -3, which is 4.5 plus 3, that's going to be 7.5, which is option D. So that is one way. This way of finding the solution, or this way of finding the roots or the x-intercept of parabola is called splitting the middle term, where you have to split the middle term into two numbers such that the product of the number is equal to a into c and the summation of the number is b itself. Okay, but there's an easier way to do it. What you can do is you can simply graph this on the Desmos, right? Because you know that Desmos is allowed. Okay, so let me just show it to you what I'm conveying over here. If I take a Desmos on the board, okay, so as you all can see, this is a Desmos calculator. This is allowed in the exam. So what you can do is you can simply graph this equation. What was the equation? 2x, when we converted it, it became like 2x square minus 3x minus 27 is equal to 0. But when we are going to graph it, we have to take it equal to y, because y equal to 2x square minus 3x minus 27. Okay, so let's go and graph it. So y equal to 2x square minus 3x minus 27, y equal to 2x square minus 3x minus 27. So this is how the graph looks like. Okay, but now in this graph, which point represent your solution? The point that represent your solution are those values of x where y is 0, because in the actual equation y was 0, right? Which means the x-intercept. So as you can see, the x-intercept of this graph is -3 and 4.5, which means these are your solutions. So you do not need to do anything. Simply go and graph it. Look for the x-intercept where y is 0, and then that's the solution, -3 and 4.5. So you can directly come back to the slides. And once you have the solution, right, you have got the solution, and you can just put the value of m in, right? But you have to remember, each and everything are correlated. Which point represents the solution? Because y component over here is 0. So x-intercept represents the solution. Keep in mind. Okay, next question on the board. Please do it. Pause the video and come back. Okay, so I hope you already have done it. Now talking about this one. So one way to do is that we can try to factor it out. We can see a quadratic in the numerator. We can see a quadratic in the denominator. So one way is that we can factor out the quadratic in numerator and denominator, and then we can do it. But that will take some time, right? So the other way is what we have learned in the classes, in the previous classes, that we can do plugging in. When can we do plugging in? Whenever we have variables in the question, we can do plugging in. So in this question, there's a variable x. So let's try to plug in some number for x. Let's say x as 1. Okay, if we plug in x as 1, so what do we get? 1 minus 12 plus 36 divided by 2 minus 72, right? When we take x as 1. Now let's solve it. So that's going to be 36 minus 12, 24 plus 125 divided by minus 70. If we can simplify this, that's going to be minus 5 over 14, which means our target number should be minus 5 over 14. Once we get the target number, we circle that number. I hope you remember the steps of plugging in, and then we move back to the options. So 2 times x is 1, so 1 minus 6 minus 5 over 7. So that does not match your target number. So 2 times 7 over, minus 5, that does not match the target number. Option C will give you 1 minus 6. So that's going to be minus 5 over 2 times 7, which is minus 5 over 14. Yes, that matches the target number. But when we do plugging in, we check all the options, right? When we do plugging in, so we have to check all the options. Remember, so it's going to be option D is going to be 1 plus 6, 7. And of course, 7, this is also not going to match the target number. Okay, so correct option C. So someone will go for, factoring it out. But as you know that every time factoring is not an easy task, right? So why to waste your time in factoring? And even might be you are factoring it and you come to know, oh, in the middle, it's not easy to factor out. So what will you do? You're nowhere because the time is also gone. Now you have to come back again to plugging in. So it's better to do plugging in without even worrying about any conventional way of factoring it out, right? Okay, next thing on the board. Now we are going to talk about the quadratic formula. So this is the quadratic formula, x equal to minus b plus minus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. You can please make a note of this. Now, when to use the quadratic formula? You have to use the quadratic formula under those circumstances where it is not easy to factor out a quadratic, right? And get the solution. Because I told you there are 2 ways to get the solution. One is factoring it out. Second is using the quadratic formula. But every quadratic is not easy to factor out. When it is not easy to factor out, you can use the quadratic formula. Okay, now I hope you all have written the quadratic formula in the notes. Coming to the next thing. If you notice the quadratic formula, there's a term called b square minus 4ac. And let me tell you, this term b square minus 4ac is a very important term in identifying the number of real roots. When I'm saying roots, I hope it is very much clear to you by now that roots is nothing but the x-intercept of parabola, right? So root is nothing but the x-intercept of parabola. So b square minus 4ac, which is a term in the quadratic formula, will help you recognizing the number of real roots or number of real x-intercept. If b square minus 4ac is greater than 0, then you have 2 real roots. Means the parabola will be having 2x intercept like this. Okay, 2x intercept. When b square minus 4ac is equal to 0, then only 1 real root. Means the parabola will be having only 1x intercept like this. Only 1x intercept. Okay. When b square minus 4ac is less than 0, there is no real root. Means there is no real x intercept. Means parabola is not intersecting the x-axis. Okay, it will not be intersecting x-axis. So kindly write down all the 3 conditions because that's very important in the exam to identify the number of roots or number of solutions for a quadratic equation. Okay, now you can try this question. So this question says, what are the solutions of the equation? Looking at the equation, it's very clear it's a quadratic equation, and for this quadratic, you have to find the solutions. So you can take your time, pause the video and come back. Okay, so I hope you already have done it. Now look at the equation. looking at the equation, looking at the terms in the equation, do you feel that it is easy for us to factor it out? I don't feel so that you can factor it out, right? So what is the other way to find the solution? The other way to find the solution is, when it is not easy to factor out, is using the quadratic formula. Okay, and what is quadratic formula? X equal to minus b plus minus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. So first of all, we have to compare this equation with ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0 form, so that we can identify what is a is 1 by 2, what is b is minus root 2, and what is c is minus 2. After comparing with the standard form, ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. Now we can substitute this value in the quadratic formula. So minus b, so minus of minus root 2 is plus root 2, plus minus under root b square. So minus root 2 square is square of a negative number is positive. So minus root 2 square is 2, minus 4ac, right? Divide by 2 times a. What was a? 1 by 2. So x is gonna be root 2 plus minus square root of 2 minus, so 2 times 4. So that's gonna be 2 minus, this is, if you just cancel out 4 by 2. So that's gonna be 2. So minus 2 into minus 2 is plus 4 over 1, which is gonna be square root of 2 plus minus square root of 6. This is the solution, okay, which is option C. As you've seen, every time it is not possible to factor out. When it is not possible to factor out, then you can find the solution by using the quadratic formula. Okay, and one more way I told you, you can simply go and graph it on Desmos, and you can just look for the x-intercept of the parabola. That will be your solution, right? Okay, this question. Pause the video, do it, and please come back. So I hope you already have done it. Coming to this question. Given the equation 3x square plus 12x plus 6 plus 3m equal to 0, for what value of m is there exactly one solution? So what kind of equation it is? It's a quadratic equation, right? And for a quadratic equation, we have to compare it to which form? Standard form, which is ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. So what is a over here? A is 3. What is b? B is 12. What is c? C is 6 plus 3. So this whole thing, if you compare with ax square plus bx plus c, so 6 plus 3m, this is the value of the constant term c. Now, we want to have one solution. Okay, what is the condition for one solution for a quadratic equation? You remember? The condition for one solution for a quadratic equation is b square minus 4ac equal to 0. One solution means parabola is having only one x-intercept, right? One x-intercept. So b square minus 4ac is 0. So let's substitute the value. So b square minus 4ac is equal to 0. So 144 minus 4 into 3, 12, 6 plus 3m equal to 0. So that's going to be 12 equal to 6 plus 3m. It's just solving. Okay. So this is going to be 6 equal to 3m. So m equal to 2. So that's the value of m. Easy. Right. So you just need to remember the conditions to be able to solve the questions easily. Okay. Now this question, again, you can pause the video, try doing it, and please come back to refer to the solution. I hope by now you're finding it a little bit easier because we have done some questions on it. Okay, so let's go and see how to do this one. So equation is given. The equation above, where m is a constant, has no real solution. Okay, so first of all, the main objective is that whenever an equation is given to us in the exam, we have to look at what kind of equation it is. Is it a linear equation? Is it a quadratic equation? Is it an exponential equation? Right. So looking at this equation, if you just simplify a bit, you can see it's going to be ma square plus 10a, plus 3 equal to 0. So what kind of equation it seems to be? It seems to be a quadratic equation. And now, once you know it's a quadratic equation, you have to recall all the concepts of quadratic. So it is asking for no solution. Now, what is the condition for a quadratic to have no solution? Recall, the condition is b square minus 4ac should be less than 0. If it is less than 0, then a quadratic will have no solution. No solution means the parabola will have no x-intercept, right? Solution is the x-intercept. Okay, so parabola will have no x-intercept. Now compare it with the standard form. What is the standard form? The standard form is ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. So what is a? A is m. What is b? B is 10. What is c? C is 3. Now just put it over here in the formula. B square minus 4 a c less than 0. Okay, so it's going to be 100 minus 12m less than 0. So if you want, you can solve for m. If you don't want, you can simply plug in the answers. Why? Because the value of m is given to you. Value of m is given to you in the answers. You can try to plug in one of these value one by one and see that which value of m will make this inequality to be less than 0. So if you take m to be, let's say 8. Okay, if you take this option, these are the values of m. So it's going to be 100 minus 12 into 8, which is 96. Is it less than 0? No. If you take m to be 10, so it's going to be 100 minus 12 into 10, 120 less than 0. Yeah, 100 minus 120 is minus 20, which is less than 0. This is the correct answer. So either you can solve the inequality or you can simply take the help of the answers here, plug in the answers and see which value of m will give the inequality value to be less than 0. Okay, so remember the conditions. Now this question, pause the recording and do it, come back, see the solution. Okay, so I hope you all have gone through it. Now, if you just look at this question, as I have been always saying to you, that what you have to do. Whenever you come across the equations in the exam, you look at an equation, the first thing that should come to the mind is to identify what kind of equation it is. So what kind of equation? The first one is, it's a linear equation, which gives you a line. Second equation is a quadratic equation, right? That gives you a parabola. Now, what kind of parabola it will give you? Upward parabola or a downward parabola? Because the coefficient of x square, the coefficient of x square is, what is coefficient of x square? 1. Because the coefficient of x square, which is a, now if you compare with ax square plus bx plus c, what is the coefficient of x square? A, and which in this case is 1, right? If the coefficient of x square is positive, then it's an upward parabola. So it is a upward parabola. Now it is asking you to find the solution, like at how many real solutions are there. So it is asking you the number of solution. So in order to find the number of solution, you do not need to worry about anything. You can just go back to the Desmos and graph it. Okay, so you can just graph the two equations. So one equation is y equal to minus 4x plus 12. Okay, let me just show it to you. So we are just going to graph it one by one. So one is y equal to minus 4x plus 12. Okay, y equals to minus 4x plus 12. That is one equation, right? What is the second equation? Second equation is y equal to x square minus 9x plus 16. Y equal to x square minus 9x plus 16. Let me just confirm. Y equals to x square minus 9x plus 16, right? So you have plotted. Now, once you have plotted the two equations, you can see that a linear equation has given us a line and a quadratic has given us a parabola, upward parabola, because the coefficient of x square was positive. Now, if you want to see the solution, so what is the solution? Solution is the point of intersection of the curves, right? And we have two different graphs. Okay, we have a line and we have a parabola. So what will be the solution? Solution will be the point of intersection of the line and the parabola. And how many points of intersection are there? A line and a parabola is intersecting at 2 points. See, because we have 2 points of intersection, so it has two solutions. Okay, so all you need to do is you just need to observe the point of intersection of the graphs. And if the graph is intersecting at 2 points, they have two solutions. If the graph is intersecting at 1 point, they have one solution. If the graph is not intersecting, the two graphs are not intersecting, they have no solution. Okay, so here we have two solutions because a line and a parabola is intersecting at 2 points. So simply graph it and do it, right? Simple. Okay. why do you need to calculate all those things? You can, once you have a graphing calculator allowed in the exam, right? You can simply go and graph the two equations. You can see the point of intersection of the curves. If the curve has 2 point of intersection, 2 solution, 1 point of intersection, 1 solution. If the two graphs is no point of intersection, no solution. Simply go graph and see the point of intersection of the graphs, right? Okay. Now, sum and product of the root. So the sum of the root is given by minus b by a, remember, and the product of the root is given by c by a. Okay. What is root? You remember, the root is nothing but the x-intercept of the parabola, right? So the sum of the x-intercepts of the parabola is minus b by a, and the product is c by a. Okay. Next question. So this question says that if x and y represent the solution of the equation above, what is the value of x into y? Okay. So first of all, if you go and you simplify this equation a bit, what do you observe? You have to multiply this, okay? You have to cross multiply. So when you cross multiply, you get m square minus 2m is equal to 2m minus 1 into 2m plus 1, right? So which will is it's of the form a minus b into a plus b, isn't it? Which is a square minus b square. So it's going to be a square minus b square. Now you can bring all terms on one side. So 4m square minus m square is 3m square plus 2m minus 1 equal to 0. What kind of equation it is? It's a quadratic equation. Okay. Now what we have to find? X and y. X and y are the solution. Okay. X and y are the solution. But do we need to find the individual value of x and y, or we have to find x into y? We have to find x into y, which means we have to find the product of solution. Right? And what is the product of solution in a quadratic equation? The product of solution is given by c by a, isn't it? The product of solution is, or the product of roots is c by a. So what is a? If you compare with the standard form, I hope now it is easy to identify. A is 3 and c is minus 1. So product of solution is c by a, which is minus 1 by 3. So you do not need to go and find the solution. When it is about the product of the solution or the sum of the solution, you can simply use the formula. Sum is minus b by a and the product is c by a, right? Okay, so now we are going to move to the next part, which is a quadratic word problem. Okay, so talking about the quadratic word problem, we have some question on the board. Let's see and do it. So this question on the board says that Bob throws a stone off a bridge into a river. The stone's height x seconds after Bob threw it is modeled by this equation. How many seconds after being thrown the stone will hit the water? So basically, as I have been always saying into the classes, and I think I would have repeated it for n number of times, that whenever you look at an equation, the first thing is you have to identify what kind of equation it is. So what kind of equation it is? It's a quadratic equation. Okay. It's a quadratic equation. Now, it is saying that we have to find how many seconds after being thrown the stone will hit the water. So one thing is for sure, that when the stone will be hitting the water, the height is 0, right? So the height is going to be 0 over here when it is hitting the water. So we have to just replace 0. Okay. And then we have to simply solve for the value of x, right? Now, there are many ways. One way that you can solve the value of x by splitting the middle term, right? By splitting the middle term, which of course will take time, splitting the middle term and factoring it out. Why will you do that? The second way to solve for the value of x, that you can simply go and you can graph it on Desmos. And after graphing, you can look for the x-intercept of the parabola. Once you see the x-intercept, it is the point where the y value is 0, and which means the height is 0, right? This third way is that the value of x is already given to you in the options, right? So you can try to plug in these value one by one back into this equation, and you can see that which value of x makes the equation 0. So I feel like rather than going and graphing on the Desmos, which again will take time, the more easier part can be just plugging in one value of x from the options. For example, if I take x to be 1, because that seems easier, and I plug in over here, so it's going to be 6 plus 12 minus 18, which is of course 0. So 0 equals to 0 means x equal to 1 satisfies the equation, means this is the correct answer, because at this value, the height is 0, right? So either you can graph on Desmos and look for the x-intercept, or you can use splitting the middle term, or you can use just plugging in the answers. Okay. There are some classic quadratic over here that you have to remember, like a plus b whole square, a minus b whole square, and a square minus b square. These are some classic quadratic which you will, if you remember, will help you in solving some questions easily. Okay, so make a note of this thing. Now, coming to the next part is this question. So if you want, you can pause the video, you can try this and then come back. So I hope you already have done this. Let's try this question. So what we are given in the expression above, p is greater than 1 and both p and q are constant, which of the following could be the value of q? So if we know that p is a number that's going to be greater than 1, right, and p and q are constant, we have to get the value of q. So what we can do is we can try, expanding the RHS, right hand side of the equation. We can expand using the classic quadratic, a square plus b square minus 2ab, right? We can expand it. So it's going to be 3x square minus 36x plus 108 is equal to px square plus pq square minus 2pqx, right? Now you can just compare the coefficients of x square, coefficient of x, and the constant term on both the sides. For example, what is the coefficient of x square on left hand side? That's 3. What is the coefficient of x square on right hand side? That's p. So comparing the coefficient of x square, you can say that this is equal to p. Basically, p is equal to 3, right? But what do we need? We need the value of q. So you got the value of p to be 3. Now we can compare the coefficient of x. What is the coefficient of x on this side? Minus 36. And what is the coefficient of x on the right hand side? Is minus 2pq. Okay, so minus minus cancels out. Value of p was already known to you, which you can substitute here. So q is gonna be 36 by 6. That's gonna be 6, right? So this we can easily do by just expanding both sides of the equation and comparing the coefficients on both the sides. This way of comparing the coefficients on both the sides is called coefficient comparison method. So coefficient comparison method works well when you have two equations equated to each other. Then you can directly compare their coefficients, like coefficient of x squared should be equal, coefficient of x should be equal, and the constant term on both sides should be equal. So use coefficient comparison method. Now let's once again come back and let's deep down more about learning the quadratic from the graph of the quadratic. Okay, so once again we are going to talk about the quadratic, but now we are going to dive deep down to it, okay, so that we can tackle some difficult questions. So as you know that a quadratic gives us a parabola, and the point where the parabola takes a turn is called the vertex. The x coordinate of the vertex is h and the y coordinate of the vertex is k, right? Now if you look over here carefully, looking at the graph of the function, it is very clear that the x coordinate of the vertex. The x coordinate of the vertex is the midpoint of the roots, isn't it? Because what is this? This x1 and x2, they are the roots, means they are the x-intercept. Okay, so looking at the parabola, isn't it very obvious that the parabola is symmetric about the vertex, as you can see? So the x coordinate of the vertex is the midpoint of the roots, and which is, how do you find the midpoint? If the roots are x1 and x2, remember roots is nothing but the x-intercept, right? So it is x1 plus x2 by 2, right? So how do you find the x coordinate of the vertex? The x coordinate of the vertex, which is h, is given by the midpoint of the root. It is the midpoint of roots or midpoint of the x-intercepts of parabola, which is x1 plus x2 by 2. Now, what is x1 plus x2? x1 plus x2 is the sum of roots. Am I right? It is the sum of roots. And how do you find sum of roots? Minus b by a. So if you want to replace, you can replace x1 plus x2 as minus b by a. So it is minus b by a divided by 2, which is minus b by 2a. So this is how you find the x coordinate of the vertex. So how do you find the x coordinate of the vertex? Minus b by 2a. Once you have the x coordinate, you can put it back into the equation. You get the y coordinate of the vertex, right? How do you find the x coordinate? To find the x coordinate, it is minus b by 2a. That is the x coordinate of the vertex. Once you get the x coordinate of the vertex, you can put it back into the equation to get the y coordinate. Okay, let's look for some question. if the equation of a parabola is this, then what is the x coordinate of the vertex? Okay, so we know that we are talking about the vertex. Vertex means this point. Okay, and the x coordinate of the vertex is h, which is given by minus b by 2a. So this is how you can find the x coordinate, right? We have just talked about it. Next question. When the parabola is graphed in xy plane, its maximum value is m comma n. What is the value of n? Now, as I said, looking at the equation, you have to identify what kind of equation it is. It's a quadratic equation. Why it's a quadratic equation? Because when you multiply x with minus x, you get minus x square. So square is there, na? So it's a quadratic. Now, this is given to you in which form? This is given to us in the factored form, right? Isn't it? This is given in the factored form. Because the factored form is like y equal to a times x minus x1 and x minus x2. This is given the factored form. Now, if I ask you, see, I'm telling you an easy way. If I ask you that from this factored form, you just need to find the x-intercepts of parabola. How do you find the x-intercept? By putting y as 0. So if you put y as 0, you can directly get the x-intercept. No? To get the x-intercept, you have to put the y as 0. So which means either x minus 5 can be 0 or minus x minus 7 can be 0. Means x can be 5 or x can be minus 7. Means these are the x-intercepts of the parabola, right? Minus 5 and minus 7, something like this. Minus 7 and 5. These are the x-intercept of parabola. What you have to find? You have to find its maximum value. Okay, so one thing that you have to observe here, that if we are talking about the maximum value and also the coefficient of x square, because when you multiply x with minus x, it will be minus x square, right? What is the coefficient of x square? The coefficient of x square is negative, less than 0, which means when the coefficient of x square is negative, it's a downward parabola. So the parabola in actual has to be a downward parabola, like this. Okay, it has to be a downward parabola where one of the x-intercept is minus 7, another x-intercept is 5, and you have to find the maximum value. The maximum value lies at the vertex of the parabola. Okay, and how do you find the x-coordinate of the vertex? The x-coordinate of the vertex is the midpoint of root, which is x1 plus x2 by 2. Here x1 is minus 7, x2 is 5. And x-coordinate of the vertex is the midpoint of the roots. Na? So it is minus 7 plus 5 by 2, which is minus 1. So the x-coordinate is minus 1. Once you have the x-coordinate of the vertex as minus 1, you can simply substitute this value back into the equation. Okay, in this equation, you can put this value of x and you get the y-coordinate, which is minus 1, minus 5, minus 6. Minus of minus 1 is plus 1, minus 7 is minus 6. So that's going to be 36. So it's going to be 36. Means the y-coordinate of the vertex, is 36. This is the y-coordinate, right? This is the y-coordinate. So once you get the x-coordinate, put it back into the equation, you get the y-coordinate. So it's minus 1, 36. So what is n? N is the y-coordinate, which is 36. Okay. You can watch it again, this part, if you want to clarify it more. Okay. Next question. Try this one, pause the video and come back. Okay, so I hope you already have done it by now. So this question says that a cannonball shoots into the air such that the height of the ball is given by this equation, which is a quadratic equation. Now look at the quadratic equation. What is the coefficient of t square, or what is the coefficient of x square? If you compare with ax square plus bx plus c, the coefficient of x square is a is minus 12, which is negative. If the coefficient of x square is negative, it's a downward parabola like this. Okay, it's a downward parabola. You know? If a is a negative number, means if the coefficient of x square is negative, it's a downward parabola. So it's asking the maximum height. Okay, so let's say if you make a xy plane, okay, so what do you have on the x-axis? Time. What do you have on the y-axis? Height. And you know that it's going to be a downward parabola, something like this. Okay, so you have to get the maximum height. So this is your maximum height. This is your maximum height. Am I right? So maximum height is nothing but the vertex, right? Where maximum height is at the vertex, means it is the y-coordinate of the vertex, right? It is saying it reaches maximum height after 5 seconds. It means after 5 seconds, it reaches maximum height. Means the x-coordinate of the vertex, the x-coordinate is 5 and the y-coordinate is the maximum height. Am I right? And how do you find the x coordinate of the vertex? The x coordinate of the vertex is given by minus b by 2a. So comparing it with ax square plus bx plus c, what is b? B is m. So it's going to be minus m by 2a. What is a? A is minus 12. So 2 into minus 12. So 5 is equals to m by 24. So m is equal to 120, right? So just make a rough sketch. Try to identify it's an upward parabola or a downward parabola. Mark the points as per the condition given in the question. If it's a vertex, so you will get to know, okay, whether I'm given with the x coordinate of the vertex or the y coordinate of the vertex, and accordingly, recalling each and everything, you can do it. Okay. But I just want you to just look for this part once again to clarify more. It's always a better idea that you draw a rough sketch and then do it, especially in the questions that are based on the quadratic. Okay. I hope we have done many questions up till now, so you will be easily able to get the answer to this question. Please pause the video, come back and look for the correct answer. Okay, so I hope you have done it. Let's talk about this question. What kind of function it is? Quadratic function. And we always look at it and we identify. Okay, now it is saying if, let me check whether the parabola is an upward parabola or it's a downward parabola. Okay, because it is saying when you multiply this, you get ax square, no? When you simplify this. So what is the coefficient of x square? A. And it is given that a is less than 0. So which means if the coefficient of x square is less than 0, it is a downward parabola. If the coefficient of x square is less than 0, it's a downward parabola. If it is greater than 0, it's an upward parabola. So in this case, it is less than 0. So it's a downward parabola, right? The coefficient of x square is ax square. No? When you multiply this, x into a. Now, what is the maximum value of y in terms of a? So it is asking maximum value. So over this downward parabola, where is the maximum value? This. And this maximum value is called vertex. So what you have to find? You have to find the y coordinate of the vertex. What you are interested in, y coordinate of the vertex. But to find y coordinate, you have to have the x coordinate of the vertex. So how do you find the x coordinate? This equation is given in the factored form, right? It is in the factored form. You can find the x-intercept by putting y as 0, right? If you put y as 0, you can get the x-intercept. So the x-intercept will be either x plus 3 will be 0, which means x equal to negative 3, or x minus 7 will be 0, x equal to 7, which means the x-intercept of the parabola will be negative 3 and 7. If this is the x-intercept, then the x coordinate of the vertex is the midpoint of the root, which is negative 3 plus 7, midpoint of the roots na, by 2, which is 2. So once you have the x coordinate, you can put this x coordinate of the vertex back into the equation and you get the y coordinate. So 2 plus 3, 5, and 2 minus 7 minus 5. So y coordinate is going to be minus 25 times a. So that is the y value of the vertex, right? Maximum y value means maximum y value occurs at the vertex. So is the y coordinate of the vertex represent the maximum value, right? So this question, I think it's a simple one. You can do it now. The parabola is given by the equation this. What is the x-intercept? So to find the x-intercept, the y value is 0, right? So you can just put the y value 0 and you can solve for it to get the x-intercept. Okay, so it's going to be 16 equal to x minus 1 square. So x minus 1 equal to plus minus square root of 16. So x minus 1 equal to plus minus 4. So x equal to 4 plus 1 and x equal to minus 4 plus 1, right? So x equal to 5 and minus 3. So the x-intercept of the parabola is 5 and minus 3. Okay, 5 and minus 3, like 5 and minus 3. This will be the x-intercept, right? Okay. Now let's do this question. This question, again, a quadratic is given to you. It is asking you which of the following represent the y-intercept of the graph. What do you mean by y-intercept? At the y-intercept, the x value is 0, right? Whenever you talk about a y-intercept, let's say this is the y-intercept. What is the x value at this y-intercept? The x value is 0 over here, right? So in order to get the y-intercept, you have to put x as 0. And what is x over here? Time. So when you put time as 0, you get h of 0 equal to 9, which means it is the height when time is 0. So when the time is 0, it is the initial height. So what does y-intercept represent? Y-intercept represent the initial height. Okay. Similarly, next question, pause it and come back. Okay, I hope you have done it. It is asking again a quadratic equation. It is asking what does the x-intercept represent? At x-intercept, y is 0. You can just put the y value, which is height. Na? Height is the y value. You can just put the y value to be 0. So when you put the y value 0, which means what is y? Y is the height. Na? So height is 0. And when the height is 0, it means it is the time when the ball hits the ground, because when the ball hits the ground, the height is 0. So actually, when you put height as 0 and then you solve it, you will be getting those value of t, those time value when the height is 0 means when it is hitting the ground. So it will give you the time when the ball hits the ground, right? That is the x-intercept. So just one thing, at x-intercept, put y0, at y-intercept, put x0. Okay. The last question, please do it and then come back. Okay, so I hope you have done it. And by now we have done so many questions. So I think you are very clear about it. So this question says that if a quadratic function defined by this, where a is greater than 0. So knowing that a is greater than 0, a is greater than 0 means the coefficient of x square is greater than 0, means it is a upward parabola or downward parabola. When the coefficient of x square is greater than 0, by now, I hope you learn it. It's an upward parabola. So it cannot be option A. It cannot be option B. It has to be upward parabola, right? Now, C is less than 0. Now, in this case, what does C represent? C represent the y-intercept of the parabola, right? C represent the y-intercept of the parabola, which means the y-intercept is less than 0. If y-intercept is less than 0 means in which case the y-intercept is less than 0. In option C, the y-intercept is negative. Na? Less than 0 means negative. But in option D, the y-intercept is positive. But knowing that y-intercept is negative, it has to be option C, right? So thank you so much. This is all for today's class. This is slightly, lengthy class because, as I said, that this particular, part, which is what we have done in today's class, is a very, very important part in the SAT. Okay, so we have to do many questions on it. We have to learn it in more detail, and even I request you the same thing. If you were not able to make the notes, try to go back, make the notes and solve some questions on it to make it more clear. Any part that you want to specifically watch again, please watch it, but make sure that each and everything should be clear to you in the quadratic function. So thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care. See you in the next class.